Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Photo and Design Workshop. This is Doc Hallaq again with you. You may have noticed that I'm in a new location, had some technical difficulties, had to make some adjustments, and no matter, I'm here with you, and we're going to move forward into our next lesson and see what we can do with Photoshop now. I know that you guys have just come through a real tough challenge from that last exercise that I gave you. It was a real challenge. I know that. But I'm really happy with what you guys have come out of here with and what you provided in that exercise. The point that I really wanted you to get out of it is how extensively you can use Photoshop to create some amazing artwork. Sometimes we underestimate the power of Photoshop, and I wanted to kind of demonstrate to you how much we can do with that. After I'd been using Photoshop for a number of years, I heard from another colleague who had been studying up on Photoshop, and he told me that if you know 10 to 12% of Photoshop, now it doesn't seem like very much, right? Only know 10 to 12% of Photoshop, you would be considered a super user. And the reason for that is because Photoshop is so dense. There is so much that you can do in Photoshop. And in this class, we really are literally just scratching the surface and just barely getting you used to the interface and some of the tips and tricks that you can do in Photoshop. So I want you to realize how powerful a program this is. And one of you may be using 10% of the program, and then another one may be using a different 10%, and your workflows may never cross. You may be doing completely different things in Photoshop, and yet both of you may be considered super users. So that's how dense this program is and how expansive you can work in this program. So hopefully you're getting more comfortable, getting into feeling like you can dive into some new things and experiment a little bit, even with some things that I'm not mentioning. And that's really the whole point of this class. So hope you're there, hope you're having fun. And we are nearing the finish. We can see the finish line, that light at the end of the tunnel. So hang in there with me for a few more sessions and we'll get through this. So one of the things that I want to introduce to you today is not necessarily a technique in Photoshop, but really an external tool that you can use. Some of you, if you've been doing some design work, maybe you have already come across some of these tools. One of the tools that I've been trying to get back to using a little bit is what's called a Wacom tablet. Some of you may be familiar with this. I've got just a little teeny one here. Comes with a tablet and it comes with a pen or a stylus. And you can do some fun things with that. Years ago, when I was much younger, I did a lot of artwork with pen and pencil drawings and really enjoyed that. It's been a little while since I have done that. I've been using my mouse quite a bit these days. And so I've gotten used to using Photoshop with my mouse. But I can use this stylus with this board, and I can do some fun things. So I want to illustrate or just show you some of the things that I have done. Let me go in here and share my screen, and let's open up Photoshop. And this is a photo that I took some years ago. I've shown you several photos from this same trip along the Pacific Coast Highway. It was a fantastic trip. Really enjoyed it, had a good time, and got some fantastic photographs. This was a fun photograph. I wouldn't call it my best one, but it was kind of fun. And I really like these three chairs sitting out here outside. They're each a different color. And then there's some other colors going on in this image as well. And what I did with my Wacom tablet is I took my pen and I started drawing on a new layer. You'll notice right down here, in my layers, I've created a new layer. I've got my background image. I've created a new layer, and let me just bring that on here so you can see what I've done. And I just kind of sketched out some of the elements in this photograph. And in this look right here, where I'm kind of blending the two with the color from the original image and then the sketches from the secondary layer that I've used with my Wacom tablet. just kind of going in there and having a little bit of fun and getting used to that pen again after using my mouse. Now, the other thing I can do is I can go back here and I can just make that background layer disappear. And now it just kind of looks like a pen and pencil or a pen drawing. And I could go in and add some color if I wanted to. I could go in and use virtually any tool. So one of the things that you'll notice with the pencil, the stylus that I'm using right now, you can literally go in and you can use any tool in the Photoshop interface. There's my brush tool. I can make a real fine brush. This is what I've done here. Made a small size brush and I made a real hard edge so that it kind of reflects a pencil. I could also go in and soften the brush size. I can make it look act a little bit more like a paintbrush. I've got several brush tips here that we've already gone over. I can go in and use those and work with those in Photoshop as well. I can use the eraser tools. I can use my selection tools. Any of those I can use. It works essentially just like a mouse, and I can go in here and do some fun things with my drawings. I can even navigate this. I created a new adjustment layer, and I can get rid of that. So this is one way that you can go in and kind of make your photographs look a little bit more like a sketch drawing. So that's just one thing I want to show you real quick. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if you're an artist and you're used to using pencils, pens, paintbrushes, tools like that, but you want to use some of those things in Photoshop, this is one way to do that. By the way, this Wacom tablet, I've got the least expensive one, and I got it on sale for a little under $100. So they're not terribly expensive. It'll take a little bit of investment, but not a whole lot. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that image because I've got some other fun things to show you. What we're going to talk about today is using filters. And you have probably noticed clear up in the top menu of your Photoshop menu, there is a filter menu. And we've got a lot of different filters in here. There's a lot of different things we can do. I'm going to show you just real briefly a few of them, hopefully some of the more fun and crazy ones. And if you want to get a little bit more serious with your use of filters, there are several tutorials out there that are available. I'll try to provide links to some of those that I think are pretty good. I've found a few ones that I really like. And if you're serious about your photography and making adjustments to your photography, then there are some different ways that you can use filters than what I'm going to show you today. But I'm going to show you a few things here that first of all might apply. The first couple might apply to your photography and adjusting your photography. Then I'm going to show you some kind of fun and crazy things that we can do with our filter gallery as well. So let's just start with this image here. This is an image, I actually found this online. We'll go ahead and unlock it. And just a portrait of this young lady. And one of the things that we like to do in portrait photography a lot of times is create a shallow depth of field. And also that is sometimes called bokeh in photographer language. What that means is that the background of the image is really blurry, and then the foreground, our subject, is in really sharp focus. And so it really separates the subject from the background. So in this image, the photographer has really done a pretty good job. We've got a pretty fuzzy background, but in the case that we want to really accentuate that a little bit more, here's where filters can come in. So what I'm going to do in this image is I'm just going to use my polygon lasso tool, and I'm going to go kind of loosely create a selection around this young lady. And I'm going to do this fairly quickly, and it doesn't right now need to be particularly precise. So you'll notice that she's got some wispy hairs from her hairdo. They're kind of way out there, and women's hair is always a little bit more of a challenge to work with than men's hair. I keep trying to convince my wife that it'd be really a lot easier for her if she had a hairdo like mine, but I haven't convinced her to do that yet. And actually, truth be told, I think she looks a lot better in the hairdo that she's got. So I'm just going to finish that selection area up right there. And in order to do this non-destructively, I'm actually going to copy my layer. And now my selection, I've got my layer copy, and my selection is on that layer. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a layer mask. Okay. And so there we can see the layer mask around our young lady. Our base layer is invisible right now. My copied layer is the layer that has the mask around her, so the whole background is gone. Okay, let's go ahead and bring that bottom layer back. And what we're going to do now with this bottom layer is we are going to go up to the filter options, and we're going to go to blur and go into blur. And this is a really useful tool in here. The Gaussian blur is a great tool to use. So we'll go ahead and select that. And usually when we get into the Gaussian blur, it's defaulted way down here to about 1.0. And you can see right here, there's just a little teeny preview. Notice it's at 100%. So if we have a high resolution image, it's going to be zoomed in quite a bit. We can zoom out if we need to navigate to where we want to go. And I'm going to zoom back in because that helps us see the effect of the filter that we're doing. Okay. And back up just one step so that we can see a little bit of the background. So right here, we can see her hair. And then over here, we can see some elements in the background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really bring this Gaussian blur up quite a ways. And you notice her hair is blurring out, but remember, we're applying this filter to the bottom layer. So it's going to blur the entire image. Okay. And I'm going to bring it way extreme. I'm going to go up to about 70. And I'm going to hit OK. All right, so there we can see the difference between the background that has now been blurred and the subject that has a mask on her. And you're going to notice that around the edges here, it looks a little bit unnatural because of the mask. So what I'm going to do is select the mask, and I'm going to select my brush. Shortcut on that is B. And this one's really tiny. I'm going to enlarge that brush a little bit. Oh, and I've somehow gotten a custom brush. So I'm going to go back to my general brushes. That's because I was showing you around there with that tablet. I'm just going to use a standard brush, increase the size a little bit more, and then I'm just going to kind of zip around the edges and increase the size of that brush, or rather the mask, and make that edge a little softer going around our subject. And that's going to make it look a bit more natural because we'll still see the strands of hair, but they're going to be a little more soft focus. This one here is kind of sticking out. Okay. So I would just go around again with a little bit more detail and touch up that mask and make her look a little bit more natural. And now our young woman here really pops out from her background. And if you're not sure, you're not seeing the difference, let me just show you. Okay, there's our blurred background. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back in our history. I'm just going to go back to the original image. So there's our original image. And then down to the bottom there's our blurred background image. You can see how much more this young lady really pops out of that background. So we've kind of artificially created a more shallow depth of field, increasing the bokeh in the photograph. That's just one simple thing that we can do with filters. Filters are actually one thing that have been in Photoshop almost since the beginning, allowing you to adjust different elements of a photograph. So that's one of the things that I'm going to show you here. I'm going to not save that. And I'm going to go to this image. This is in your image folder. It's called Serenity. This is a photograph that I took on that same trip of that first photo that I showed you, Pacific Coast Highway. This image was taken in along the Oregon coast, southern Oregon, and obviously a beautiful sunset on the ocean here. And I've got this individual who's sitting there and just really enjoying the waves crashing in and the beautiful sunset, and finding it really peaceful. And one of the things that you might notice about this image, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit and fill our frame up, notice the sky. It's a very clean, clear sky, and those colors are really, really intense. In some ways, that's one of the things that I like about this image, is the intense colors, but in other cases, that might be a little too much. So I've gone ahead and unlocked my background. I'm going to, again, copy that layer, and I'm going to leave that bottom layer alone. I'm going to work on this top layer a little bit with filters. And what I'm going to do in this case, back up to my filters, I'm going to come down here to noise, and I could reduce my noise. I can add some scratches and dust, but I'm going to add noise. I'm going to select that option right here. And this is what it looks like when I add some noise. I've got some different adjustments. I can add increased noise. I can decrease the noise and make that adjustment. I'm going to bring this down around 25 to 30. There we go, 25.98. That's maybe a good level for what I'm trying to do. I can distribute it uniformly. I can distribute it with Gaussian, which is more of a random look. And I can also create that noise as monochromatic, so it's black and white only, or I can check that off and the noise is more colored. I'm going to use the colored noise with a Gaussian distribution, and maybe bring this back down just a little bit closer to 20. Okay, so I'll hit OK, and now what I've got is I've got a little bit of speckle on there on just the secondary layer, and I can do a couple of different things here with this. I can go in here to my blend modes, and I can select one of these blend modes. Here's a lighten, screen, color dodge. You can see the different blend modes that can be used with this. There's an overlay that really darkens the silhouette and puts more focus on the ocean and the sunset, and so forth. You can kind of experiment with these and find just the one that works best for you. I'm going to use this lighten right here, and then what I'm going to do is just adjust my opacity just a bit so that I can bring back much of that original image. But what this has done now is, by adding that noise, it's kind of toned down that intensity of those solid colors in the sky, and made the image look a little bit different. So here's the original image, and here's some noise added through filters. Let's go back up to the filter options, and you're going to notice a few things up here. First of all, you'll notice right here, this is the last filter that we have used. It saves it up there, and so if you want to reapply another version or another layer of that filter, you can just go up here and click it. It's same settings, but adds just a little bit more. We can just go ahead and do that, and you can see how that adds to it. The other thing that you're going to notice is convert for smart filters. This is kind of a nifty option here. If we convert an image for smart filters, what it does, it says to enable re-editable smart filters, we'll have to convert the layer to a smart object. Okay, and we're okay with that. And now you'll notice on that thumbnail, there's a little icon down in the lower right-hand corner. And so that means that it's been converted for smart filters. And what smart filters do, now what we can do is we can go in here and we can add a filter. Let's say we want to add some dust and speckles to our image. Give it a little bit more of a film look or something. We'll hit OK. And now notice what happened to that filter. Okay, previously the filter just applied directly to that layer. In this case, we have got an additional layer down below here that is our smart filters. There's our dust and scratches. And what I can do is I can click that eyeball, turn it off, and kind of do a comparison of with or without that filter. So that comes in really handy. As we add filters to this image, those layers will just add to our smart filter. So I'm going to go in here and let's actually go into our filter gallery. That's another thing that is kind of fun. As we go into our filter gallery, you'll see that we have several different types of filters here and a lot of different choices. So we've got these in folders. The first folder is artistic. Okay, and we can do several different. The cutout filter is actually one that as we make adjustments to that kind of makes our images look a little bit more cartoony. So if you wanted that kind of look, that's what you get here. You can also do dry brush, and those of you who are artists know some of the techniques that you get from dry brush. All sorts of different artistic types of things. Also have brush strokes. If you want to go in and make this look a little different here. You can kind of just experiment with those. We go into the sketch folder, you're going to notice the sketches are all black and white. And in some ways that's nice, but if we don't want our image to be just simply black and white, then blending modes really come in handy here. So again, you'll notice that our preview is zoomed in to a lot of detail. It's because our preview almost always shows up as 100%. And so if we've got a high resolution image, it's only going to show us part of it. We can zoom out to see a bit more of it, but it's going to diminish the detail that we see of the effect of the filter. Okay. So just be aware of that. I'm going to try this chalk and charcoal. We have some adjustments up here. We've got some charcoal area that we can adjust. We've got some chalk area that we can adjust. And stroke pressure that we can adjust. That shows us a little bit more detail as we increase that. So I'm going to hit OK. Let me see if I can get my zoom out of the way. I'm going to hit OK. And there you can see what we have done here. We've got the filter gallery filter. We've got the dust and scratches filter. We've got the secondary layer. And all of this is being adjusted with the same opacity. We can bring that opacity down just a little bit more. And that shows a little bit different look to our image. Again, here's the original photograph that was taken. And then as we have applied all of those layers, this is what it looks like again. Step back one, that's removing the filter from our filter gallery. And step back again, that's removing our dust and scratches. But if you notice, if you remember, on that original layer before we converted it to a smart object. I applied the noise, so we're still seeing the noise. And again, there's our original image. So those are some things that we can ways that we can alter our photographs. And those are all pretty standard, typical types of adjustments that we might make to photographs, very traditional and conservative. What I want to show you now, I'm going to show you an image that you've seen before. We've got this palm tree here, and I like this as a good illustration for this next tool that I'm going to show you. And this is a little bit crazy. I'm going to go ahead and unlock my layer and back to our filter, and we see this option here called liquefy. And this is kind of an interesting thing. When we open up the liquefy option, notice there's a whole new menu here that we have. We've got brush tools, we've got eraser tools and smooth tools, we've got some twist tools, some puncture, float, all sorts of different things that we can do with this liquefy. I'm going to increase the size of my brush, and looking at a bloat tool, I can go in here and I can bloat. Look at that. You can see that tree kind of bloating up, getting fatter as I move that brush all along there. And that's kind of an interesting thing to do. If you've ever watched a snake eat its prey, kind of looks like that a little bit. All right. I can go back to the pinch tool. Again, increase the size. And there we go. We can make it go back skinny again. So we can do some fun, kind of crazy things. If we go to the actual pen tool here with the liquefy option, I can go down here and look at this. I can do some really crazy, funky things with this liquefy option. All right. So that's just something fun that I wanted to show you. As you start branching out on your own and getting a little more creative with your Photoshop artwork, you might find ways that this would come in handy. This option pushes left. What does that do? I haven't worked with that for a little bit. We need to zoom in so we can see the effect of that. And you can see that everything in the swipe area of that brush is getting shifted just a little bit. And all of that weird liquefy effect is actually getting put back mostly to its original place. Right? But you notice less detail in the branch of that tree there. So that's just kind of some crazy stuff that we can do with the liquefy tool. Again, we can go in here, and if we're dealing with a portrait, it gives us some options for eyes, nose, mouth, and other elements of a face. And we might go jump in there later and play with those just a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to cancel out of that. This is kind of a crazy fun thing that we can do. The next thing that I want to show you, this is kind of a fun technique. It's been around for a little while. It appeared, I'd say probably 10 years ago. This effect got really popular, and what it's called is a tiny world effect. And you can go on and get all sorts of short tutorials on the tiny world effect. I'm going to show you how to make this. This is a pretty easy thing to do, really, and it's kind of fun. So what I'm going to do, we're going to start off by, of course, unlocking our layer. And it's best if you start off with kind of a panoramic view like this. So I've got this nice panoramic view of Jacksonville, Florida. If you've never been there, it's a fun city to visit. I was there several years ago. This is not my photograph, though. I just found this one online. Whenever you go online, just as a reminder, make sure that as you select images online, we'll get to that young boy here in just a minute, we'll be using that. But when you go and do a search online under Google Images, always make sure you go to the tools here and you check your usage rights. You want to go labeled for reuse with modification. And then I always like, if I'm going to be working in Photoshop, I always like to get those large images that are higher resolution. It does limit your options a little bit, but it gets you a better image that you work with. The importance of this usage here is that you want to make sure that you are not using copyrighted images within your artwork. Okay, so you want to be able to use images that allow you to modify it. Sometimes you have some labeled for non-commercial use and so forth. So make sure that you're using photographs that you can have rights to. One of the nice things about this, here's one that says NASA Gov. Anything from the government is free to use with no copyright infringement, because we are all taxpayers. So all of us have money that go to those images. So if you're using images that are coming from a government agency, whether it's NASA or anyone else, those are always copyright free. So you can do some fun things with that. All right, back to our Photoshop. Okay, here we are back in Jacksonville again. We've got this nice panorama of Jacksonville. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select just a little bit of this image over on the far right-hand side. Doesn't really matter if you do the right-hand side or the left-hand side. We're going to copy that and paste that. And then I'm going to move that selection back over to the opposite edge. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to get our skies to kind of match a little bit. And so from one side to the other. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go under Edit, Transform, and I'm going to flip this horizontally. All right. So now what we have is we have the right edge of our image that mirrors the left edge of our image. The next thing that we need to do with this image is we need to kind of make sure that the sky area and the water area match as much as possible. So we're going to apply a mask. We're going to take our brush tool. I might want to zoom in here because I'm zoomed out quite a ways. And now I'm going to use my mask to make that match. And in this case, we've got this bridge tower that's popping up a little bit. So I'm going to actually mask out some area around that, and hopefully make that look relatively natural. And then down in our water area, notice I've got a soft edge on my brush, and that helps blend those two areas quite a bit. Okay. So now we can see a little bit of the reflection of that bridge tower. And you see that bridge. Looks like those buildings are built right in front of that bridge, obstructing it. That's okay. I think that will work for us in the end. So just a real simple blend there. And now what we'll want to do is we need to merge this layer onto the layer below. So we can just go to this layer, we can right click, and we can flatten the image. Okay, and now we're back to a new background. Unlock it again. Back to my move tool. I'm going to zoom out so I can see the entire thing. The next step that I need to do is I need to make my image square. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go up to Image, select Image Size, and make sure that your height and width are unlocked. Okay, if we click that little link right there and we see those brackets, that means they are locked and the aspect ratio will continue to be the same regardless of what adjustments we make. So if I make the width smaller, let's say I cut that in half and go to 12, you'll notice that my height also changes. Okay, and in proportion, so it keeps the image in proportion. Well, that's not what we want in this case. I'm going to go back to image size, and I'm going to keep it unlocked. And I notice my width is my width is 24.65. So I want that same width, or that same measurement in my height. So 24.65. And okay. So this is going to make the image think a little bit. There we have it. Let's zoom back out so we see the whole thing. And you can see how everything's kind of stretched and warped now. That's typically not what we want when we're working with a photograph, but for this effect, with this filter that I'm going to show you, this is the look that we want to go for. Okay, so now it's time to use our filter. I'm going to go up to Filter, and I'm going to select Distort, and I'm going to select now Polar Coordinates. And as I select Polar Coordinates, I get this menu that comes up. I can select Rectangular to Polar or Polar to Rectangular. I actually want the Rectangular to Polar option. And this is going to be a real easy adjustment. I'm just going to say, okay. Now, look at that. It's kind of taken our city and inverted on the inside. So that's actually the wrong thing that I want to do. I want to take you back here. This is an easy step. We need to go to Edit, Transform, and we need to flip this vertically. The other thing we could do is we could rotate it 180 degrees. Either way, we get the same effect. So now our skyline is upside down. Now we can go back to our polar coordinates. And remember how I told you the last filter we used saves right there? And there it is. So I don't even need to go back into my filter options. I can just select my polar coordinates again. And there we go. We have a tiny world. Now, just for kicks and giggles, I've got this picture of this young man right here. I'm going to go ahead and bring this image, move this window down, and I'm going to bring this layer on top of my tiny world, and I'm going to distort him a little bit. I'm going to start off by just making him a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to mask him. So I'll just use a quick selection tool. I'll go in here and make sure he's selected nicely. We'll probably zoom in, yeah, get his sleeves there. Get his bare legs. Okay. And so now I'm going to mask. Okay, we got the wrong thing. So we need to invert our mask. So select, inverse. It's an easy fix. And mask him right here. Now you'll notice this is something that I've seen in some of your work that you've turned in for your exercises. Look real carefully here. You can even zoom in. And you can see there's some artifacts from around the frame of the image. Okay, so easy way to get rid of this, we're just going to use our brush tool. That might be a little bit big of a tip. We don't need very big. And make sure you've got your mask selected. As we use our brush tool, we're going to click. I'm going to get in here as close as I can to his hat. I'm going to click. And then I'm going to come straight out here, hit my Shift key, click again. Okay. And it looks like my edge is a little bit too soft, so I'm going to get my hardness again. And once again, click as close as I can. Come over here, hit Shift, click again. It's a straight line, and that edge disappears. I can do a little touch up right there. Let's go back to the other side. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to decrease the size of my tip. Click right there. Shift, click right there, and we've got that edge out of the way. Okay, once again, click right here. We'll go to the bottom, Shift, click, and that edge just disappears. Okay, now it looks like the bottom and the right side are doing pretty well. So zoom out, and what I'm going to do this time, now on this image, is I'm going to edit, transform, and distort, and go ahead and make some adjustments there. It's going to think about it. All right, and now I can place this little guy right there in my image, and as I zoom out to look at the entire image, now he kind of fits the same expansion that we see in the buildings, where they're a little tiny down on the base, get wider out here. That's just a little fun thing we can do. Okay, so that is how you can create your own tiny world using filters. Go in and really experiment with all of these different filters and see what they can do for you. Some of them you'll notice a pretty dramatic change, some of them you won't. Make sure also that you check out the filter gallery, and you kind of make some, just try things out here and see what they do. Okay, we've got some different textures. Here's one, we can make a stained glass look. And again, we can make some adjustments to all of the different components that make up that filter look. Okay. And don't forget that when it's appropriate, use your smart filters. That shows you how you can use some filters. Your assignment for today is to do an exercise where you give me a photograph. Make sure that you include the original photograph. It can be one of your own. It can be one that you find online. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you've got usage rights to it. And I'd like you to filterize that image to make it look more like artwork rather than a photograph. So whether it's applying brush strokes or a pen and ink look or some other additional filters, then go ahead and try that. The other thing that I'd like you to do while you're playing around with this, I'm going to share my screen again, is as you apply those smart filters right here, I'd like you to move them around a little bit too. See how I did that? I just drag it just like I do my layers. I can pick them up and I can change the order of them. So change the order a little bit on your smart filters and see how that impacts the look of your image. In some cases, it will be fairly noticeable. In other cases, like this one, not noticeable hardly at all. But I'd like you to go ahead and experiment with that and see if you can find some type of a different look. So just send me a filterized image that you make look a little bit different. And if you like, if you've got a Wacom tablet, or if you just want to use your mouse, go in and create a drawing from a photograph that you have taken. Hope you're having fun. Keep working. We're nearing the end of this class. I hope that you're getting much more comfortable in here, and I want to see you go out and experiment and just try some new things that find out what you can do in Photoshop. Okay? This is Doc Hallaq. Don't forget to join me for my virtual office hours if you need to. You know where to find me. I'll see you next time. Have a great time.